Let's kick this explainer off. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating narrative that perfectly captures the massive financial clash of our time, the tension between traditional economic theory and the completely disruptive paradigm of Bitcoin. We'll be walking through a conceptual story called the Fiat illusion that really gets to the heart of why established institutions struggle so much to wrap their heads around the new digital economy. To start off, I want you to ask yourself a question. What if the things we consider to be the absolute natural laws of economics, how prices are set, how inflation behaves, what if they aren't laws of nature at all? What if they're just really deeply ingrained habits? We might just be so used to a specific system that we've literally lost the ability to see its flaws. That is the core premise we're exploring today. We're challenging some of our deepest, most automated assumptions about how money actually works. To paint a picture of this, our source material sets a pretty striking scene. Just imagine a grand ivory tower. You're inside a massive lecture hall in a super prestigious faculty of economics. This is basically the ultimate echo chamber of traditional finance. Standing at the front of the room is Professor Somkiat. He's this formidable, highly respected academic who champions orthodox economic views. And then, casually leaning against the doorframe, yawning like he hasn't slept in days, is a young guy named Satoshi. He represents the decentralized future. Satoshi is essentially waking up from a nap to challenge the unquestioned dogmas being preached in that room. It's the classic showdown, the old world versus the new. Okay, let's dive into this. Professor Somkiat's traditionalist thesis is crystal clear. He argues that Bitcoin completely fails as a standard unit of measurement. Because its price swings wildly every single day, and because absolutely nobody prices a bag of rice in it, he declares it cannot be considered real money. To the traditional academic mind, it's literally just thin air. To really grasp what the professor is getting at here, we need to quickly touch on the concept of a unit of account. In economics, this is basically a standardized metric used to value goods, services, and assets. Think of it like a ruler you use to measure economic value. The professor's whole argument is that if a ruler changes its length every single day, like if an inch is a completely different size tomorrow than it is today, you obviously can't use it to build a house. So because Bitcoin's price fluctuates against fiat currencies, he firmly believes it completely lacks the ability to be a functional ruler. Well, in response, Satoshi drops a counter-argument that requires us to flip our perspective entirely. See, in the traditional fiat worldview, we just assume our money is stable. We think it's the prices of goods, like coffee, real estate, or Bitcoin, that are wildly fluctuating. But Satoshi asks us to look at it from the Bitcoin worldview. In a system built on Bitcoin, a specific fraction, let's say 10,000 sats, is mathematically fixed. 10,000 sats is always exactly 10,000 sats. The profound question he poses here is, what if the good being bought isn't what's moving? What if it's the money itself? Now, what's really interesting when we visualize this is how Satoshi illustrates the point. He looks at a graph comparing the price of a simple cup of coffee. On one side, measured in a fiat currency, like the Thai baht, purchasing power is just on a severe downward trajectory. Tomorrow, the paper money in your hand might only buy half that cup of coffee. But on the other side, the cost measured in Satoshis remains completely constant. Satoshi uses this to argue that the illusion of volatility is actually created by a collapsing fiat currency. When fiat plummets, it makes everything measured against it look like it's shooting up or acting crazy. From his perspective, it's not the coffee or the Bitcoin that's fundamentally broken, it's the fiat measuring stick. To really corner the professor's logic, Satoshi takes the narrative on a trip back 1,000 years with a thought experiment. Imagine ancient humans trading a rare golden crystal. If this crystal was physical, tangible, and strictly limited to exactly 21 million pieces in the entire world, would the professor consider it money? Reluctantly, Professor Somkiat admits that, if it's physically tangible and naturally limited, it serves as a perfectly natural medium of exchange. Let's move on and see how this builds, because getting the professor to agree to this golden crystal scenario is a huge trap. Satoshi exposes the core paradigm shift right here. He points out that the old academic guard actually agrees entirely with the economic principles of absolute scarcity and limits. The problem? They are completely trapped by familiarity. They stubbornly refuse to apply those exact same sound economic principles to digital code. They wrongly assume that physical tangibility is a strict requirement for value, totally missing the fact that verifiable, absolute digital scarcity achieves the exact same economic function. So the crucial point is this. It leads to the climax of Satoshi's argument. The professor isn't rejecting Bitcoin because it lacks the properties of money. He's rejecting it because he's overly attached to its physical form. Satoshi powerfully declares that the volatility isn't coming from Bitcoin. The true volatility comes from the paper ruler, the fiat currency that is constantly stretched, shrunk, and manipulated by politicians and central planners at will. In this view, Bitcoin simply exposes the fiat currency for what it really is, a manipulated tool of measurement. That right there is the ultimate fiat illusion. Faced with this totally undeniable counter-argument, the story reaches this humorous but really symbolic climax. The professor is visibly sweating. He's completely unable to defend the glaring flaws of his traditional system. So what does he do? He suddenly fakes a stomachache, excuses himself, and literally runs out the back door of the lecture hall, ditching the campus entirely. This perfectly illustrates something we can call the ego's escape. When the old orthodox system is confronted with the stark reality of a new decentralized paradigm and can't defend its mechanics, it doesn't adapt, it just retreats. As we wrap up this explainer, I want you to really think about your own finances. Are you measuring your wealth, your savings, and your entire future with a broken paper ruler? If your unit of account is constantly being stretched and shrunk without your consent, how can you possibly accurately plan for tomorrow? The story of the fiat illusion isn't just an academic theory, it's a fundamental realization about how we perceive value in our everyday lives. I really hope this explainer has challenged your perspective and given you a totally fresh lens to view our economic reality. There is so much more to this story, so be absolutely sure to look out for our highly anticipated next installment, The Melting Wealth. Thank you so much for joining me to explore these concepts, and remember, keep questioning those ingrained habits.